In July 2011, Netflix was worth more than $16 billion. By November, almost 80% of that was gone. 800,000 customers cancelled in a single quarter. The stock collapsed from $304 a share to $63. And the CEO, one of the most admired executives in technology, had to go online and admit in writing that he had no idea what he was doing. This wasn't a recession. It wasn't a hack or a failed product or a scandal. It was one decision, a decision that looked on paper completely logical. This is the story of how Netflix almost destroyed itself at the absolute peak of its success, and the strange 23-day panic that saved it. By early 2011, Netflix wasn't the underdog anymore. It had already won. Founded in 1997 by Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, the company had spent a decade quietly dismantling the most powerful name in home entertainment. Blockbuster. Thousands of stores, millions of loyal customers, and one deeply profitable habit: late fees. Netflix attacked that habit head-on. No stores, no due dates, no late fees, just a red envelope in your mailbox and a flat monthly subscription. But the real weapon wasn't the mail. It was the software that tracked what you watched and told you what to watch next. A recommendation engine that kept people paying month after month. And here's the part most people forget. Netflix almost didn't make it this far. During the dot-com crash in 2000, the company was bleeding cash and close to dead. And in desperation, Hastings flew to Dallas and offered to sell the entire company to Blockbuster for $50 million. Blockbuster laughed him out of the room. 11 years later, that joke had become the most expensive mistake in the history of home video. By 2011, the stock hit $304, and Wall Street called Netflix the future. They looked unstoppable. But Reed Hastings was haunted by something. He had just watched Blockbuster die, and he believed he knew exactly why. Companies don't usually collapse because they fail to see the future. They collapse because they cling to the past, to the old, comfortable business that still makes money. For Netflix, that old business was DVDs, warehouses, postage, more than 50 shipping hubs, an army of logistics. Streaming needed almost none of that, and streaming was exploding. Hastings became convinced DVDs were dead men walking. But there was a problem. Customers loved the bundle, and Netflix's own engineers warned leadership directly. People valued having everything in one place. One account, one queue, one brilliant recommendation engine connecting all of it. Splitting it apart, they cautioned, would break the very thing that made Netflix sticky. Hastings didn't listen. On July 12, 2011, he made his move. The $10 bundle was gone. From now on, streaming would cost $7.99. DVDs would cost $7.99 separately. And if you wanted both, the exact service you already had, your bill jumped to $15.98. Overnight, a 60% price increase. Customers were furious. But Hastings wasn't finished. 2 months later, just after midnight on September 18th, he posted a message that made everything worse. The DVD business wasn't just being priced separately. It was being spun off into an entirely different company with a new name, Qwikster. Different website, different account, different password, a separate queue, a separate bill, and no connection to your Netflix recommendations at all. The company's single greatest advantage, simplicity, was being deliberately destroyed by its own founder. Was this genius? Or was it madness? The market answered within hours. Subscribers revolted. Tech blogs called it one of the worst rebrands in history, and newspapers piled on. Then came a detail so absurd it became legend. In the rush to launch, nobody had checked whether Netflix even owned the name online. The Qwikster account on Twitter already belonged to someone else. a stranger whose profile picture was a cartoon character holding a joint. Netflix had announced a new brand to millions of people without owning its own handle. And then the numbers turned brutal. In one quarter, roughly 800,000 subscribers cancelled. The stock began a free fall from $304 toward $63. Nearly 80% of Netflix's value evaporating in a matter of months. Billions gone. The same analysts who had called Netflix the future now asked whether it would survive. Some called for Hastings to be fired, and competitors, Amazon, Hulu, Apple, smelled blood. For a few weeks, the most admired company in tech looked like it might become another Blockbuster, undone not by an outside enemy, but by its own hand. So what actually went wrong? Because here's the twist. Hastings wasn't wrong about the future. He was right. DVDs were dying, and streaming did take over the world. So why did being right nearly kill the company? The answer lives in the gap between what Netflix believed and what its customers felt. Customers rarely resist change itself. What they resist is friction, being forced to work harder for something they already had. And Netflix didn't introduce one change. It introduced 4 at once. Higher prices, separate accounts, separate websites, separate brands, all landing on the same confused customer within weeks. But the deeper failure wasn't strategy. It was culture. Years later, internal post-mortems revealed something damning. Brilliant people inside Netflix had seen the disaster coming. Database architects, product managers, even vice presidents, and almost none of them spoke up. Why? Because the CEO was so passionate, so certain that disagreeing felt like career suicide. The company had built a culture that rewarded speed and punished friction, and quietly mistook silence for agreement. The plan was never piloted, never stress-tested. Leadership had sealed itself inside an echo chamber, insulated from its own data and its own people. And what makes this the most important part of the story is what Netflix did with the lesson. It didn't just fix a pricing page, it rebuilt how decisions got made, turning an informal habit into a hard rule it called farming for dissent. Now, before any major move ships, the person proposing it has to write it up, circulate it widely, and actively collect the strongest arguments against their own idea. Staying silent when you see a risk stopped being polite. It became a failure. So here is the verdict. Netflix didn't nearly die from a lack of vision. It nearly died from too much conviction. Vision with no brakes. But what saved it was rare. On October 10th, just 23 days after announcing Qwikster, Hastings killed it. The DVD business stayed inside Netflix. The split was cancelled, and instead of defending himself, he did the thing most CEOs refuse to do. He apologized publicly in writing. "I messed up," he wrote, admitting he had slid into arrogance based on past success. The price increase mostly stayed, but the confusion was reversed. And critically, Netflix did not retreat from streaming, the one thing it had been right about. It doubled down. In 2013, it released House of Cards, dropped an entire season at once, and invented binge-watching, pouring billions into original shows the studios could never claw back and going global. Korean thrillers, Spanish heists, German science fiction. The company that nearly destroyed itself with one decision became the most dominant name in entertainment on Earth. So, what's the lesson buried inside the wreckage? There are 3. The first mistake was forcing customers to move faster than they wanted to. Hastings was right about where the world was going, but wrong about how fast people would follow. And being early, it turns out, looks exactly like being wrong if your customers aren't ready yet. The second mistake was stacking every painful change into a single moment. A price hike, a rebrand, a split, separate logins, all at once. People can absorb a higher cost, or they can absorb disruption, but rarely both in the same breath, because timing isn't a detail, timing is the strategy. The third mistake was building a culture where no one was allowed to say stop. The disaster was visible from inside the building, and the problem was never a shortage of smart people. It was a shortage of permission to disagree, which is why Netflix later made dissent mandatory, requiring every major decision to survive open, organized internal pushback before it ever ships. Reed Hastings spent a decade being right about almost everything. That was the problem. Because the most dangerous moment for any company isn't failure, it's success, the kind that slowly convinces you that you can no longer be wrong. Courage and arrogance look identical at the start. The difference only becomes clear at the end.